So, do you worry about your child receiving too much support or not enough support at school? So, welcome to our live show tonight. This is a redo. The first go around didn't have any sound at the beginning, but we're going to be talking about support for your child at school tonight. So some parents tell me their children get too much support at school, and other parents tell me their child doesn't get enough support so they can be successful at school. So in either case, you're in the right place tonight because we're going to be talking all about that. So welcome to the Art of Advocacy show. And like I said, it's going to be talking about the different levels of support that our kids can get, and also how we can fade that support so we make sure that they're not becoming too dependent on. But like I said, tonight it's going to be all about different levels of support for your child. So the first thing I wanted to go over is what we talked about last week when we did our live Facebook show. Last week we talked about those unintended consequences that happen when our child gets too much support at school. And the first one is pretty obvious. Our kids become less independent if somebody is always helping them and doing things for them. The second thing that can happen is if a teacher sees that there's always a para helping your child, then the teacher doesn't feel that responsible for, helping your child actually learn more. The other thing that I notice is that sometimes teachers will rely on paras for doing the instruction instead of the teacher figuring out there's other instructional strategies that they could use that would help your child. So this might be co-teaching, where the special education teacher goes into the classroom and team teaches with the classroom teacher, or it could be using frameworks like universal design for learning, cooperative learning groups. All of those are really successful research-based strategies that if the classroom teacher uses those, sometimes your child won't need that para support. Instead, just the very way that the teacher is, the methods that they're using will be enough to provide that extra support for your child. So the other thing that's really important if there's too much adult help is that you lose that chance for tapping into the natural supports that you have in the classroom. Your child's classmates, they can just be the ones that, will maybe gently remind your child of what they need to be doing next. So instead of always having adults sitting right next to your child, have that adult be walking around the room so there's a chance for natural supports to be in place. And the last thing that can happen if we have too much adult support is that kids get hardly any chance to make friends and to be with friends. When they always see this adult almost Velcro to your child, kids don't want to be around another child where there's always that adult. So we've got to give kids opportunities to be with their friends and their classmates in order to develop those relationships that are really important for them at school. So I wanted to take us back to a childhood story that I'm sure all of you remember, Goldilocks and the Three Bears. And Goldilocks was going through the woods and she found this nice little cute bear house that she decided to visit. And inside the house, she found many things, that, weren't quite right. She tried out many things. One of the things that she tried was a bed, and it was just way too hard. It wasn't right. So she tried the next bed, and that bed was way too soft. And finally, the third bed that she tried was just right. Well, that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. We don't want your child to have too much support. We don't want him to have too little support. We want him to have the just right amount of support. So that's what our goal will be tonight. And as we talk, I'm going to be referring to different levels of support. And not every teacher uses the same terminology, but I think it will be one that, will make sense. And what we'll do first is just go through the different 7 levels of support. And then after we've named them, we'll go back and define them a little bit more and give you some examples. Whenever possible, I think we want to start with the least amount of support and presume competence with our kids, that they can be successful without somebody doing something hand over hand with them all the time. So the first level of support would be natural. And then the next level, if the child isn't successful, would be gesture support. Then indirect verbal. The 4th level is direct verbal or direct oral. The 5th level is modeling. Then we have partial support and full physical support. And that would be the most amount of support. Now, some students, because of physical disabilities or because of health or safety needs, they may have times during the day when they need that full physical support, and that's okay. We just want to make sure that we don't assume that they'll need that for every area in their life at school. Now, these we're going to be using school examples, but these can also be levels of support that you can use at home. Helping your child do chores, helping your child with their homework. So think of these, and we'll try and use some examples too of what you might see at home to help your child be more successful there. So let's look at that first level of support that we're calling natural supports. And this is when there's no cues or no prompts given. We just use the natural supports, the natural cues in the setting, either the classroom or at home. And those natural cues might be enough to help the student know what they have to do next. So an example here is it's the end of the day, kids are getting ready to go home, and the student notices that everybody is cleaning up. So he's like, I guess that's what I'm supposed to do too. So he starts cleaning up. That would just be using natural supports as a way for him to do what he needs to be doing. Now, if that doesn't work, you can go to the next level, which is the gesture level, where you're going to give a physical cue. Now, you're not giving a physical prompt, which is different, like actually, having hands over hand to try to help them do something. But a gesture is just like nodding your head, like, yep, you're doing the right thing, keep going, or giving somebody a thumbs up, or it might be whoever's giving him support, another classmate could just point to the next math problem that he needs to be doing. So just that pointing, some other kind of gesture might be enough support, and the child can be successful. If not, then you could look at the next level, which is indirect verbal support. And this is when you ask a question, you're not telling them exactly, the direction, but you ask them a question and get them thinking about what they need to do next. So the example here is a question that says, Jason, what do you need to do when you're finished with your worksheet? And then you pause and you give Jason time to think about it. And it's like, oh yeah, after I finish my worksheet, I got to go put it in the basket. So just that little bit of a question can help the child know what to do next. Now, I'm going to share with you an example of how we figured this out at home with our son Dylan. When he was younger, he had the chore of feeding our dog. Well, we noticed if we gave him a direct verbal direction like, Dylan, it's time to feed the dog. he would get upset, he would protest, he would try to negotiate and say no, he's going to do it later. And it just became this, kind of a battle to get him to do his chore. Well, what we figured out as parents is if we made it just a statement instead, so make it more indirect, we said, Dylan, it looks like the dog's hungry. And then we stopped and we paused, and he would think and he would process, and it'd be like, oh, I guess I need to go feed the dog. And then he would do it. I mean, it was like magical. It's like, how can this one little thing make such a difference? But it did. And I think for Dylan, what it was, instead of having mom and dad telling him what he had to do, we just made that statement, looks like the dog's hungry. And he felt then that he had control of the situation and he could go and figure it out. Oh, I need to feed the dog. So it's amazing, those little tweaks that we can make and how it makes our day much smoother. Well, for some students doing some tasks, they need, specific direct verbal directions. And so the student might be told, exactly what page they need to turn to in the book. That would be a verbal direction. And with that, the student would be able to turn to the page. He just needs that verbal direction. In another class, the student might need some actual modeling where they need somebody to actually demonstrate what the task is and then give them a chance to do it. So this might be in a biology class, and the support person could be a para, it could be the teacher, it could be their lab partner, but that person would show them first how to do that first step of dissecting a frog, and then give the chance for the student to do it. And they would repeat that step, and by watching somebody do it first, they would know how to do it. So if your child is more of a visual learner, a lot of times the modeling is a level of prompt that helps them. They visually watch somebody do it first, and then they can do it themselves. There might be a situation where your child needs partial physical assistance. So it's not like you're, taking over and doing the whole thing for him, but just some physical assistance, and then he can do the rest. Now, this example is when I had a student in my classroom that used a wheelchair and didn't have much use of his arms, but he still was participating in the work that we were doing. So what I would do is I would upload a worksheet into the computer. So I was doing a physical task for him, but then once it was uploaded, he could get it going and he could answer it on the computer. So that was partial assistance. I helped him by uploading it, but he did the rest of the work by himself. Now, there might be situations when a student needs full physical support, and this is the greatest amount of support that you're going to give students. So the example here is, something that you might remember doing if you have a younger child where you're helping them learn how to tie their shoe, and you might have shown them how to do it. You might have given them a chance to try, but they're still struggling. So there might be times where you need to just do that hand over hand support and help them, get the different steps of tying his shoes down. So like I said, hopefully there'll be a lot of times during the week or, during the day that a student will just need less amount of support. And we want to see if we can't start at a lower level before we just assume that he needs a lot of help doing things. But there are going to be times, especially when a student has physical health needs, and it might be a safety concern where you're going to have to start out with that full physical support. Like I said, it could be like crossing the street. You're not going to let the child do that, with just a little bit of support if you know that they don't cross the street very safely. So there are going to be times during the day that sometimes a student will need that full support, and that's okay. What we're going to look at next is some steps that you can take when you're meeting with the IEP team. So you can do this ahead of time as the parent, or you can sit down with your IEP team and do it. But basically, you're going to be listing all the different areas or the times of day when your child needs more support at school. The second step is to say why that support is needed, because you want to build your case. So it's not just, laying it out that this is what I want for the child or my child, but you need to say this is what my child needs and then have a reason why. The third step that you want to do is to identify how much support your child needs right now to do that. And if you're working on this as an IEP goal, then what you can do as an IEP team is to say, a year from now, what do we predict will be the level of support that he'll need in order to do this task himself? So first you list the need of support, like I said, either the times of day or the different subjects. You say why they need the support. You figure out what level of support they're getting now so they can be successful. And then the last thing is you predict a year from now, how much support do we think we can give him? And as an IEP team, make sure that you write all of these things down in the IEP. So let's give a couple examples here. And if you're watching this live, hopefully the sound is still working and we're doing A-OK here. The first example is a student needs help transferring from a wheelchair to the toilet in the bathroom. Now, the reason why is because it's a safety concern. The student just physically can't do that, so he needs some adult support in the bathroom. Right now, he needs full physical support. He's not able to do any of those transfer steps, so he always has to depend on full support right now. But as an IEP team, you could be thinking about, getting the physical therapist in and having her, figure out some ways to help him start learning those transfer steps would be really helpful. The important part is for the physical therapist to make sure that she trains all the teachers and all the peers, anybody that's going to be working with the child in the bathroom. So when the physical therapist isn't there, the rest of the team can help that child learn those steps of transferring. And then again, at the end of the year, you're going to look at how much support do we need. Now, for kids with physical disabilities, a lot of times that level of support might stay the same throughout the whole year. Some students might be able to learn some of those steps, and then you can gradually fade that, and maybe by the end of the year, they just need partial physical support. So let's look at a second example here. And this is a student who needs help eating in the lunchroom. And the reason why is because there's, it's a choking hazard. So again, a safety need. This is a student who loves to take big bites of food and hardly chew it up. And so then, we can have this gagging reflex kick in, and that's certainly a safety concern. Right now, the level of support that the student needs is modeling. So he has somebody who sits next to him. Again, it could be a friend, it could be a para. And if that person shows him at the beginning of the lunch period, take a small bite, make sure you chew it, like 10 times before you swallow it. So if he gets that modeling at the beginning of the lunch period, then he's good. He remembers to do that the rest, of him eating. But he needs that help at the beginning. Well, again, if you're going to work on this as an IEP goal, the team needs to say, well, he's at the modeling level now of support, but a year from now, we're hoping that he'll just need a gesture. Like maybe a year from now, we can just have somebody point, on their chin to their mouth. And that will be his reminder of like, oh yeah, I got to take small bites. I got to chew it up really good before I swallow. When you're writing the IEP goal, you want to write in what level of support the child's going to get in order to reach that goal. That's an important component that oftentimes I think gets left out of IEP goals, but you do want to put in there, if you expect the child to do it totally independently, or if there are going to be some prompts, what kind of prompts, so everybody is on the same page when they're working on that IEP goal. So, like I said, there are certain circumstances when you're going to have to start with more full physical support. That can be, like I said, usually health or safety reasons. If a student isn't safe crossing the street by himself, you are going to have to probably start at that full physical support with somebody holding his hand, helping him cross the street safely. And then later, maybe you can fade that to just partial physical support, where maybe you're just holding or touching his elbow and helping him cross the street. And then you're still close by. If you need to, hold his hand, you can do that easily. But sometimes I think we start too much giving high levels of support without really thinking about, in this circumstance, what do we need? So I think the other thing that's important to keep in the back of your mind is throughout the school day, there might be times like in the bathroom where a child needs full physical support. But then maybe during math class, they don't. They just need somebody to remind them what the directions are. So that's at a lower level of support. When he goes on recess to play with other kids, maybe he's totally fine and he's out there playing with everybody and he doesn't need any additional support. So think about and kind of customize throughout the day the level of para support that your child's going to get. Have, ongoing, almost daily conversations sometimes with the staff to find out how your child's doing and if you need to make any adjustments in the amount of support that he or she is getting. So thank you for being here tonight on our show. It will be on my Facebook page, Visions and Voices Together, as a replay. If you like this page, then you'll get notified when I'm on live. But basically, you can mark your calendar for every Thursday. We come on live at 7 o'clock in the evening on Mountain Time. Next week, we have a para-educator that's going to be joining us, and she's going to be sharing her story with us. She started out as a para in a special education classroom, and over the years, now she is supporting students in inclusive general education classes. So that's wonderful. And I hope you can tune in for that. The following week, we're going to have another guest, and that's Dr. Julie Costin from Syracuse University. Julie's a wonderful professor there. She also is an educational consultant for schools. She's often called as an expert witness in due process hearings for parents. So Julie's going to be talking about paraprofessionals and how they can be helpful in our classrooms. Julie's also written many books, and one of her books about paraprofessionals is going to be raffled off. So make sure you stay tuned. We'll be talking about that giveaway. But like I said, I hope that you can join us every Thursday evening because we're here live. And I appreciate you taking time. I know we're all busy and life gets pretty hectic, but thanks for being here with us. And if you have any questions or comments, you can always type them in the comment box and I'll get back with you. But until next Thursday evening, have a wonderful rest of the week, and